was the end of 2015. We had 278 paragraphs that tried to bring the department under control, how they handle things, management, accountability, and so forth. And we're at the end of that right now. You probably saw that in the paper. It was supposed to be a 4-year deal. It's ended up we're in the 9th year. We got 2 more years to go if they can maintain it. As Chief Geyer once said, the police department in Albuquerque, between the mayor and the union, has been unmanageable. That's quite an indictment. Because we had rogue officers. I worked with rogue officers. We couldn't get rid of them. The union protects the worst of the worst.
Don't say that. It's not true.
Well,
It's not true. I'm making union member 37 years.
Yeah.
37 years I've been a union member, so don't ever say that. Because what you have is what the union gave you. And that started with the Teamsters back in the day, all the way until today.
I'm not indicting unions in general.
Well, you just said, you just put the
No, I
unions down.
said that the unions, that Albuquerque Patrol Officers Association went to the mat, if you will, for the worst of the worst. We have one guy that I work with, Matt Griffin. He is now in the hole up there.
Well, that's their fault. They vote for who their members are and who their presidents are, who their vice presidents are, who your treasurers are. That's on you guys.
And there, I think personally, the officers need a union. And why? Because otherwise they would be at-will employees. That would be the chief and the mayor are happy to throw anybody under the bus to take the heat off.
Yep.
But our union here, we've had a lot of problems. Not just I mentioned the protected Matt Griffin. Everybody deserves due process, and that's one thing the union guarantees. They have their own lawyer and all that. However, more than for a while, for instance, the union was offering a $500 decompression award for those who killed a civilian. Now, what the hell? That comes off like a bounty. And to your point, we also had another guy, Joyce Scala, who was given in the retirement fund. And it's like any organization, you've got bad apples in there, and you got to deal with the bad apples. I mentioned we had 3 officers when I left, that each of them had been responsible for killing 3 civilians. Now, I went 36 years and never shot anybody, never discharged my weapon. Now, part of that is luck of the draw, but these guys went out of their way for a man with a gun and those kind of things to be at the scene. To me, any group that should be trying to be self-policing. And you see, it's a problem with the lawyers, it's a problem with the doctors. They actually cover for each other, and that's really been a problem with the APOA. And I'm not even indicting the current management of the APOA. They've done a good job of articulating the officers' concerns, but they've done a poor job in the past, and we're still get rid of the bad apples. We still haven't got rid of them. Okay. Then we have at the jail, there's a so-called McLennan decree. This started in the early 90s. Billy McLennan, after being in jail for 4 years, they couldn't understand, nobody could figure out why he was in jail and what he was waiting for. Well, it turned out the jail was doing a very poor job of keeping track of the prisoners, what they were in there for, when they had court dates, and so Billy, he was mentally defective, and he was happy in there. He got 3 squares every day, had a warm place to live. But everybody says, well, that's not right. I mean, he shouldn't be in jail for. There ought to be another place for Billy McLean. So they're still working on that. Then they decided that the jail was too crowded, and they were. I can remember when the lobby at the jail was loaded with prisoners, so laying on mats on the floor. Now, if I was running the jail and the mayor says, look, you're overcrowded, what would be your response? My response would be, I'd build a bigger jail. Not cut them loose, which is the approach we've taken. I mean, you can tell by that other deal, we cut the population by factor of 3. So that, and they're still under their, and they've been under their decree to jail now since 1991. That's 30 years. You'd think we could fix it after 30 years. And in fact, we've gone the opposite way. The overflow facility is now a homeless shelter. They closed the honor farm. Why would you close the honor farm? To actually get something productive from the prison.
And those statistics were a little bit hard to understand because you've cut the population, but one of the reasons you cut the population is you never arrest people in the first place. So they never even get to the point where they're.
Well, that's a good point. You wanna make a good arrest.
Yeah.
We frankly used to arrest for everything. So if Walgreens called and they've got a shoplifter there and they fill out a criminal complaint, they went straight to jail. Now we don't. We were instructed now, and this is our SOP was on the website of the city. We were instructed, do not arrest, do not pursue. Who would give the police department orders not to arrest, not pursue? That's the city's answer to excessive use of force. Don't worry, don't arrest, don't pursue. The end of and this includes foot pursuits of all things. You can understand why you might limit auto pursuits to why some of what's happening, right? But at the end of every foot pursuit, what happens? There's a fight. And now the police department claims that only 1 in 1,000 calls results in the use of force. Now, does that sound reasonable? Do you think if you answer 1,000 calls, there'd only be one use of force? In my career, it was about 1 out of 20. A factor of 50 different. And I didn't start any fights. I had no complaints. It's not that I was perfect, but I didn't start the fights and I didn't keep going after their cuffs. Enough's enough. It's done, it's done. We justifiably were in a lot of trouble, killing too many people in fights. So the city's answer to that was don't work, don't fight, don't arrest, don't pursue. Okay.
Then you don't have any crime when you don't do that.
Yeah, if you legalize it, you don't have any time. Well, that hadn't been so far. Okay, next. Okay, why aren't we prosecuting? That's an interesting deal. And we have Sam Bregman is the district attorney now, and we'll see how he pans out. He seems to be an aggressive district attorney. He hired 50 more prosecutors. Carrie Brandenburg was, when she left office, was 6,000 cases behind. 6,000. And all the rape kits that were not prosecuted. It's hard to understand how that could be. They were not very well paid. They're authorized for 200 prosecutors. She had 100. Bregman's up to 150, but he's still not up to the 200 that they're authorized. And part of it is they're not paid very well. They call them assistant district attorneys, and they're usually bona fide lawyers. But it turns out in New Mexico, we have a lot of lawyers. We have 1 out of every 200 people in New Mexico.
Too many lawyers.
In Japan, for comparison, it's 1 out of every 10,000 persons is a lawyer. So we got, it wrecks the market for lawyers, let's put it that way. Okay, and then we have, and plea deals, one way of dealing is not prosecuting for the actual crime, but plea deals. So a person instead of a second-degree murder might plead to involuntary manslaughter. Well, the only problem with that is the record that they build up and all that is less than what they did. And some of them should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, what they actually did. These diversion courts, they're interesting. We have 13 diversion courts. We have diversion courts for DWI, shoplifting, veterans, homeless, and the thing about the diversion courts, they've been remarkably effective for first-time offenders. 90% of them do not reoffend within 2 years. That's the definition of success. But with the repeat offenders, the diversion courts have been a huge failure. 90% reoffend within the 2 years. So they tried to change modify the constitutional amendment so that if they reoffend while they're waiting for trial, they can hold them in jail. That's the least we can do. Okay, next. Okay, why aren't we incorporated? Well, the courts, Metro and District Court here, District Court is for felonies, Metro Court is for misdemeanors. They average 35% conviction rate. The national average is approximately 75%. And I never presented a case to the district attorney or the grand jury that what should have been 100%. We got them doing it, you know. And yet, they can't even explain why they're so soft on it. And the problem is, we have a hard time knowing which judge is doing what. They have as you know, we only vote to retain or not. And there's a thing called the JPEC, Judicial Prudence Evaluation Committee. And it's where the lawyers rate each other. But the problem is, what's the most important thing for a judge? What do you think?
Get reelected.
That's a personal deal. But the most important attribute for a judge is good judgment.
Right, good judgment.
And unfortunately, you can't blame them because you don't know who's making all the mistakes. We had a couple of notorious ones. This Charlie Brown. Holy cow! I mean, he kept making the paper for letting out people he shouldn't let out. You know, and there's crazy things we can't explain right now. That kid that shot his stepmother in the neck at a graduation, they let him out on his own recognizance. That's a non-explainable crime. I would say that's a dangerous person.
And mental, emotional.
And they use a thing called the Arnold tool, which is nationwide. Now, the Arnold tool is a decision making, call it a decision matrix. You score the person that's being evaluated, whether they should be released or not. And they look at, but not as much. It should be really important, but it should be the danger to the community. Flight risk is another item, of course, but the Arnold tool understates. So, for instance, if Madeline shoots her son, but she's got a clean record, and it's the first time she ever shot anybody, they let her out on her own recognizance. But she might be dangerous. She might have gone off the rails. So the Arnold tool underestimates the current danger of this.
Well, it's fine-tunable, and they've tuned it for our state to be a much lower conviction and putting people away than other states. So.
35%.
Yep.
Yeah. When we talk, next.
One thing that doesn't show up in that data is how much the people who work in law and advising for pre-sentence reports and things are influenced or constrained by the immigration system, basically. Because we have such a liberal state, you have to let people go that are offenses, and they even plead down the crime because if they had a higher level crime, they would be deported. So a lot of that is impacted by rules regarding not wanting to deport people.
I would have to agree with that. And when you're not arresting to begin with, there's no referrals to immigration control.
Right, and if you deport them, they're back in
And we're also sanctuary.
I dealt with a lot of, that I couldn't tell if they were legal or illegal, as far as it was. Most of the immigrants, legal or illegal, keep a low profile, because they don't want to be deported or take a chance of being deported. And where my business is, there's a couple of trailer parks that are almost 100% illegals, actually, and so they keep a pretty quiet profile. Not so much, there's a percentage, just like there is in every population, that are criminals and need to be separated from us. Okay. So bail reform, there was what they call Constitutional Amendment number 1. Now, it doesn't mean that that's the first amendment we ever had to our Constitution. It was number 1 for 2016. But it essentially eliminated bail for a period. And you could only hold an accused in jail if let's see if I can get this right. Or the only way he wouldn't be released is if the defense, let's see, the prosecutor said that they were, let's see, everybody, so low income, for instance, no bail. And I agree with Sometimes we were holding people in jail for a year or two that hadn't been convicted. Now, that's not right either. I mean, the Constitution says quick justice. When you're holding somebody in jail for 2 years waiting for trial and they haven't been convicted, that there's a problem there. But the New Mexico deal was the prosecutor had to make the argument that they were a danger in order to keep them in jail until their trial. The prosecutor had to prove that, or make a strong case that they were a danger to society. The way the federals work is the defense has to make an argument that they should be released. So one protects the public, one protects the criminal. And unfortunately, we went the wrong way. I think they ought to jump that whole amendment. And take the federal one, this title here, U.S. Code 3142. It protects the public, and we ought to work on getting the time of trial down.
Hey, Joe, in Oregon, they just passed the legislature or in the court system that said they don't have enough attorneys, so there's not any representation. So there's no representation, they have to release.
Well, and unfortunately for minor crimes here, if you're considered mentally incompetent to stand trial, you're just released. That's wrong.
I worked for Joe Biden.
Needs to be released.
Yeah, not released it. My recommendation would be, and if we have a special session, you ought to talk to your legislator. Hold all violent defendants in jail except those that defense attorneys successfully petitions for release. And the constitutionality of that has been well proven because it's in federal code. And for years. Okay, next. I think there's hope. We can reverse this. New York City was the perfect experiment. They were, in 1991, they were one of the most dangerous cities in the entire United States. Homicides, over 2,500 homicides. It was about like Juarez, as far as homicides. They started cracking down, and they made a lot of changes. And it wasn't just one mayor. Giuliani had something to do with it. Nagans had something to do with it. Koch had something to do with it. I was there, a good part of that half-time for some deal. But they proved that you could turn it around. So just as recently as 5 years ago, they were one of the safest big cities in the United States. And on that chart, you can see where New York City was. Guess what? Then they decide, why do we have this big ass jail and all these cops when nothing's going on? So if you can guess the answer to that, they started cutting them loose. And they reduced their police force by 10,000 officers. 10,000 officers. And on 2021, on the 1st of January, they released 3,800 prisoners from Rikers Island. That's their equivalent of, well, they're trying to close the Albuquerque community. Oh boy. Well, they'll be a perfect example. And it might work if they really do have distributed jails. In our case, we moved the jail was right in the middle of town, as we know, if they thought. And Mayor Watkins says, we don't want all the criminals right in the middle of town. So we put them 20 miles out, which had some other ramifications. It took me an average of about an hour to transport a prisoner there and back. So I was off the street driving the prisoner around. And there's ways to fix that too. Each substation has a holding area. And we have a paddy wagon, if you will, that we can residents use for DWI. If I were the mayor, I'd have them use the holding cells at each substation. They have the paddy wagon visit every hour on the hour and pick them up and take them out there instead of using the officers as bus drivers. Anyway, that's another thing. But well, what did New York City do? Well, they did. The major thing was broken windows policing. That's where you work on the small stuff and the big stuff takes care of itself. And the broken windows thing was 1982 in the Atlantic, 2 people. You let things go, broken windows, disrepair, abandoned buildings, generates more chaos. People think nobody cares. And they're right. Nobody cared. They also did a good job of analysis of where the crimes were, who was committing the crime, and what time it happened, right? And we have actually implemented that pretty much here in Albuquerque. We have the equivalent of CompStat. Tactics, we don't do stop and frisk. We do very few preventive type deals where you have some reasonable suspicion that the persons have been involved in a crime. Because of the nature, we're not a pedestrian-friendly city, so most of our stop and frisk would be traffic stops.
Joe,
And they're managed building. Yes.
Joe, you don't do anything that I can tell on the streets with the people who are doing traffic problems. And it used to be that once an officer was stopping someone for speeding, they would find a warrant out for their arrest, but we don't do that anymore, do we?
The way that worked is people, if you stop somebody, let's say for speeding, they could sign the ticket and they could get a payment envelope and they could pay by mail, or they could take it to court. And if they took it to court, if they no-showed, then a warrant was issued for their arrest, but not automatically when they got a ticket. But to give you the idea, I mentioned we were supposed to be issuing tickets and summons, not arresting. Okay?
Right.
And when I left, we had 100, well, let me ask you a question. How many outstanding warrants do you think we had in 2020? 2020?
5,000.
5,000? Warrant for arrest, how many warrants?
500, I don't know.
Some people say 100, 1,000, 5,000. 117,000.
Yeah.
117,000 outstanding warrants for arrest. And guess what? Most of those were for what? Failure to appear.
Parking tickets.
Well, for instance, the last ticket I gave for shoplifting was at Coronado. And the gal had no ID, so I really didn't know who she was. Took her word for it, but who she was. Her address, she said she lived under the bridge on Louisiana and I-40. So we used the Indian Center as her address because she'd been there once. But there's no hope that she's ever going to show up. She's not going to get any mailings from the deal. And she should have been arrested. Now, I'll tell you what, arrest has a very important crime deterrent, even for minor stuff. Because if they're arrested, first of all, it's a somewhat humiliating experience. It's not something you're proud about. If you're a runaway, which some of the younger people are, there's a chance of reuniting them with their family or their spouses or whatever. If they have a mental, if they're in a mental crisis or if they have major physical, they get treated automatically. And the big deal is we identify them, we got their picture, we got their fingerprints, we know who they are, and we build a paper trail, which is important. Because otherwise, I'm not going to make decent decisions in court or parole or anything else. Okay, so, and they kept the management accountable at all levels. Each individual officer was accountable for the stats of their own beat. We used to have our own beat. In my beat, we cleared out every damn warrant, twice, everything. And at the same time, we had 117,000 outstanding, because we pursued warrants. And actually, it was in spare time, now we're short on people, and that's another thing you address. Since in the last 6 years, we've graduated 400 cadets. 400 cadets in 6 years. We're down 8 from where we were 6 years ago. So some of them are leaving within days after they graduate, and the other ones get out as soon as they can. Why? The mayor thinks it's about money.
Their hands are tied.
Exactly. If you're a plumber, you're in the job because you do the job and you might like the job. It makes you a good living. People that go into law enforcement, and I include myself, wanted to make things better. We wanted to do the job. And when you say you can't do the job, in fact, we're in such hot water for, I want you to hide out. That's what they're doing now, hide out. When's the last time you saw anybody get in the traffic from ABD?
Yesterday morning.
That's good.
They're working my street actually.
That's good.
But you didn't.
I didn't know, I saw the cop pull the gal over.
Yeah, but you didn't get it.
And he wrote her a ticket.
Rotor, well, wow.
Well,
He didn't, he was on the computer and he came out and it wasn't a warning, it was a ticket.
warnings are okay too, but most of the I see is the Burlington County Sheriff's Office and the state are the ones that I see giving tickets. I can tell you the stats, just the stats of how many tickets we give. It's pathetic. We're down about less than half of what we were even 5 years ago. They're not working. More money, less work. Good deal if you can get it, right? But the young guys want to do the job. When you tell them they just gotta hide out and work right around, and I can tell you they're hiding places.
Donut shops. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I still got my vest here.
That's the reason why your response time is so bad.
Joe?
Response time. I'm glad you brought that up. Our response time used to be less than 2 minutes in our meeting.
It's 2 hours now.
Well,
If you're lucky.
We have 5 priorities now. And priority 1, the most important one, current response time is 23 minutes. Now, I do another lecture called "You Are Your Own First Responder." Because, brother, if you aren't, you're hurt. If your life is in danger and it takes 23 minutes before somebody gets there, you got a problem. Okay, so go ahead. I got to wrap it up.
Joe,
Yes, ma'am.
do you know how much longer this presentation is?
No, I think there's only a couple more. I think. Go to the next one. New York was a perfect example. They showed what happened when you do crack down and do the job right. Going a little further here, here's the main thing here. Well, making minor crime deters major crime, okay? And it turns out that felons also commit minor crimes. A lot of these shoplifters are guys that also do a lot more serious things. So when you arrest, you spoil their day, if nothing else. When you give them a ticket, I've had them thrown back in my face. The emphasis on arrest, not the duration of incarceration, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying throw them in the hole forever, process them all. As their arrest rate for misdemeanors went up, the arrest rate for felonies went down at a faster rate, reducing the overall incarceration rates. That sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? Next slide. This is it. This is a measure of the arrests for misdemeanors. This is total arrests, misdemeanors, and felonies. Look at that. You start enforcing the law for minor crimes, major crimes went down. In fact, they reduced crime incredibly. Auto theft by 94%, homicides by 67%, overall crime by 60%. Everything. And I can tell you how many people we need in jail to get our crime rate down to the national average. We need about 6,000 people in jail. And that's not excessive. That's less than 1% of our population. And there's just ask the Hells Angels, maybe 1 to 2% need to be separated from the rest of us. That's just all there is to it. I'm not in favor of cutting off hands or executing everybody, but they need to be separated from us. Okay, next. Okay, what New York City proved that it's not hardwired. In other words, it's not hopeless, not an incurable disease. And then they looked at all the other things that, poverty, poor parenting, bad schools. The big difference was tribunal policing. In other words, any city can reduce crime. We did in the past. We proved the same thing New York did. And we can do it again if we've got the will to do it. And so that's, okay, next. So, short term, enforce the law. More cops, more arrests, more prosecutions, more incarcerations. Be informed, that's what we can do as individuals. Be informed about your what the issues are and what your candidate stands for. It's unbelievable how ignorant people are. And most people have not seen this presentation before. And it shocks a lot of people. They said, that's got to be BS. No, I can back up my stats. You bring me new stats, and I'll incorporate them, I'll